Hi everyone, this is Mindy Egan and welcome back to another video for Tailored Expressions. In today's video, I am going to show you how to stamp on dark colored cardstock with your dye inks. Typically, you wouldn't be able to see the true color of that dye ink, but this trick I'll show you today is going to make for some awesome Halloween cards. So first, let's take a look at some of the products I'll be using, starting with the cardstock. I have 3 pieces of cardstock here cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This is a gumball, plum punch, and mushroom. I'm also going to be using the bats die, which I left all together because it was easier to die cut. I have the Happy Halloween stamp and stencil combo. So this is a red rubber stamp. And then here is the stencil design. I also have some glitter cardstock here, and I will just be using the black. And then for some of my tools, I have my trusty tweezers, a bone folder, and a palette knife. And for my stencil, I'm going to be adding some glitter to this, so I will be using the Tailored Expressions Glitter Grab and the Jelly Donut glitter, and then I also have some glitter gels from my stash. I also have my Scotch tape runner and some blending brushes, including the black and white one. For my ink pads today, I went with some great Halloween colors, including a Granny Smith, Candy Corn, Oreo. I have Jelly Donut, Blueberry, and the magic behind all of it is Sugar Cube. And I also have here my Just Press It tool that I will be using with my Misty. Now we're going to go ahead and jump right into making the backgrounds. I will be doing all of my ink blending on the Tailored Expressions grid placemats, and I'm starting with the mushroom cardstock. I will be using the same technique on all of the backgrounds where I am ink blending around the edges. Now this one is pretty simple. I am just using my black blending brush with the Oreo ink, starting from the edge and blending in towards the center. I'm going to leave the center the color of the cardstock, and I'm just using a post-it note to protect my fingertips and also the cardstock. Next, I have the gumball cardstock, and this one's going to have, I think, 3 colors on it. So I started with the blueberry ink, same process, going all the way around the edges towards the center. This one I'm going to bring in quite a ways towards the center. Then I have Jelly Donut, so same thing all the way around the edges. This just really kind of amplifies and really gives some contrast to the card. I love dramatic cards, especially for Halloween. So to really bump that up, I'm adding Oreo ink around the edges. So it kind of fades off into the center. I have that gradual color change, and surprisingly, blueberry is the lightest color out of that grouping. Now my last background here, I am using blueberry ink on the purple cardstock here, which was Plum Punch, and then once again going around that outer edge with the Oreo ink. Now that I have all of my backgrounds ink blended, I can move on to stamping them, which I will do all at once as well. So this is the Happy Halloween. Now this is a red rubber stamp, so I removed the foam insert from my Misty stamping tool, and I want to make sure that I am lining up this first one really well, very centered in the card, because I'm going to use this for all of the cards. So once I pick that up at the door of the Misty, I am going to start by inking this up with the Sugar Cube ink. Now the trick to stamping with your dye inks on the colored cardstock is this Sugar Cube ink. It is going to just really help highlight those colors, and it just looks really awesome. So once I stamp that down, you can decide if you want to stamp it twice. Some of them I did, some of them I didn't, but I just used my Press It tool to stamp those down, and I'm going to take this and set that off on the side, and I'm going to bring in my other backgrounds. So I'll go ahead and get all of these stamped, and now because it is a pigment ink, these do take a little bit longer to dry. So what I will do is I'm going to take my heat tool and just help speed up that process. I want to make sure that that pigment ink is really nice and dry before I stamp on top of it again. Once those are nice and dry, I'm going to place it back into my Misty tool, and I am going to do kind of a shadow to this. Now you can stamp right on top of it if you want. I am taking that cardstock and just shifting it ever so slightly off to one side, so off to the right-hand side. Then now this one, this is the mushroom cardstock, and I am inking up that Happy Halloween in the Granny Smith ink, and this one really surprised me. I didn't expect it to turn out so well. So after I stamped that one, I set it off on the side. I brought in my blueberry background, cleaned off my stamp, And now this time I am using candy corn. Now, if you want to stamp it twice, I would personally suggest cleaning your stamp off in between because sometimes it'll pick up that white pigment ink. And you want to make sure you're just getting the true color of the ink pad that you're stamping with. So here is the purple background, and I just loved that Granny Smith ink so much that I used it on this one as well, and it looks just true Halloween here, which was just totally tickling my fancy right now. Then I'm going to move on to adding this stencil. Now this stencil I'm trying to show up close here has the etched lines of Happy Halloween, which you will line up with the Happy Halloween on your background. Now I won't lie, with the dark colors like this, it was a little harder for me to see, but I did just kind of pull it off screen, hold it up to my light, kind of turn it, and I was able to get those letters lined up. My biggest thing I looked for is I just made sure none of my colors of ink underneath were showing through all of those swirls of the stencil. If you're using white cardstock, you'll see it with absolutely no problem. So once I had my stencil lined up and I'm holding it down on my Make Art station with the magnets, I am ink blending the Sugar Cube pigment ink. So this is just going to really help amplify and show the true color of whatever gel I'm applying. Now I had a couple of them on hand that I wanted to play with. Tailored Expressions has a few different types of glitter gel in their store and also the glitter grab, which I will show you in just a moment. So I spread that glitter gel all over the top, remove the stencil, and I'm going to set that off on the side to dry. So here is another background. This is the gumball background. This time I am applying the glitter grab. So I am just spreading that all over the background, making sure all of those areas of the stencil are covered. Once I remove the stencil, I'm going to take some just copy paper or some scratch paper, and I am next going to sprinkle on some of the Jelly Donut glitter. And this might kind of scare you at first when you see this. Now remember, we did some ink blending and stamping, so our ink is still wet. And so when I sprinkled on the glitter, that glitter is also sticking to that wet ink. And so it looks kind of crazy right now, but I'm just tapping off the excess. It's going to stick to that glitter grab. And once I have that all covered, I'm going to set that off on the side on some scratch paper and let that dry for a little bit. And I'll show you how we're going to fix that. So I still have one more background to do, and this one is the mushroom background, and I'm once again ink blending on that Sugar Cube pigment ink. Now the reason I'm doing this is sometimes when you're applying iridescent or a type of white glitter gel, it doesn't always show the true kind of sparkles in the glitter, even with if you're using Moonstone glimmer paste. So by applying that layer first, I'm kind of giving that a base layer, just like I did with the stamping. So while everything is drying, I'm going to take my bats, which I left attached because it was just easier to keep track of the dies, and I'm going to die cut out a bunch of bats. I'm going to add some foam squares behind them and add them around my card, and I just kind of changed up placement a little bit, but I stuck with 3. I like working with odd numbers with embellishments. And these card fronts are all attached to card bases, so I took just some Sugar Cube cardstock, scored it and folded it in half and used my bone folder to crease the folds. So these are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch cards. Now I have that one last card to show you, so I'll bring that in screen and I'll show you how that's looking. Pretty crazy, but what I'm going to do now that it is completely dry is I'm going to go over to my garbage can, hang that card over, and I'm just going to brush over it with a paintbrush. So that is just going to remove all of the excess glitter, and its glitter is only going to stick where I put that glitter grab. All right, that finishes off my 3 Halloween cards I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's technique and will give it a try. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. All of these products are now available over at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks again so much, and I'll see you again soon.